Well, it's day 88 of the hunger strike in Guantanamo Bay prison. We're going to cross over to Vancouver now. We're being joined by human rights lawyer Alfred Lambermont-Weber from Vancouver via Skype to discuss this further. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Weber. Now, taking a look at the situation at Guantanamo Bay prison, it is getting more dire. More hunger strikers are joining, and yet there is a sort of a deniability on the part of those people working there, as well as the part of the U.S. government, where they're not acknowledging the human rights violations that are taking place over there. What do you have to say to that?
Well, this is just fraught with what I like to call legal fraud, because many of the detainees there are not enemy combatants. They are civilians who were wrongly gathered up in U.S. government dragnets in Iraq. And I personally heard testimony as a judge on the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal in a trial in which the defendants were George W. Bush, Richard B. Cheney, Donald H. Rumsfeld, Alberto Gonzales, the former Attorney General of the U.S., as well as the counsel to the U.S. State Department. And we heard personal testimony there from individuals who had been held and tortured in Abu Ghraib in Iraq, and then transferred to Afghanistan and tortured there, and transferred to Guantanamo and tortured there. And they were civilians who had been gathered up in dragnets. And the reason for this is that the U.S., in order to meet quotas, had put out bounties on their heads in Iraq. And what they did is that they just put out bounties willy-nilly on people without any investigation. So they said, if you know anybody who's a terrorist, we'll pay you so much per head. So they started, in effect, an informal civil war in which people were turning in their neighbors, you know, with longstanding grudges in order to collect these rewards. And we're talking about women who were civilians, men who were civilians. So first of all, it's not at all certain that the detainees that are in Guantanamo now are enemy combatants. They may very well be civilians. And that's
right,
the
Mr. Weber, we're running out of time. Very quickly, if you can, how complicit do you think the Obama administration is, though, in keeping this prison open, in not making it public about the intelligence that was used to bring in these people into Guantanamo prison?
I believe, and I have just completed a 10,000-word article to that effect on my website, that Barack H. Obama is continuing the policies of George W. Bush and is as complicit in the imperialist crimes and the war crimes of George W. Bush. And this man has to be exposed for what he is. He is at the head and the capstone of what we investigated in the 1970s, almost 40 years ago, of a system called friendly fascism, which would be running the United States now. He presents a friendly face. He is to friendly fascism what Adolf Hitler was to Nazi Germany in the 1930s. And he is as culpable of war crimes, in my judgment, and I've said it in many different contexts, starting with drones, but continuing to the torture that is occurring at this minute in Guantanamo, and to the desecration of sacred texts, which is in violation of the Geneva Accords, in my opinion.
And what about the public opinion there in North America, where you are right now? Do you see the average American taxpayer thinking that Guantanamo Bay should be shut down and putting it as a priority right now, especially considering when you look at the figures, for each prisoner at Guantanamo Bay prison, the U.S. taxpayer is spending $900,000 a year. And you do the math, there are 166 prisoners there at the present.
Yeah, no, these are heavy burdens, especially in the time of sequester. And it is known that it is the war in Iraq, which is a war crime, that in effect has tripled the public debt of the United States to the place where it is now, along with the war in Afghanistan, both of which were started by the false flag operation of 9/11, September 11th, 2001. And the American public has been hoodwinked by the Bush family, and that has continued through Obama. There is no distinction between the Bush family presidents and Obama. They both come out of the same criminal organization, and that is a CIA-controlled presidency. As to whether or not the American public will wake up, it remains to be seen. Those of us in the United States are working now for regime change there.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. That was Alfred Lambermont Weber, their human rights lawyer, joining us via Skype from Vancouver. Many thanks indeed, Mr. Weber, for your comments here on Press TV.